Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClany with this week's stewardship video. So, as always, we start with the disclaimer. No advice should be seen as a recommendation or an endorsement, as I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this is for educational purposes only. Please do your own research. For this week's video, it is inspired by a situation I had in the last couple of weeks. So, had a situation in which I was missing 2 weeks worth of pay in my paycheck from my corporate job. And it began to look like it was not going to get paid because I'm paid every other week, so bi-weekly, like first and 15th. And I checked my pay stub because you can look at it 3 days before it goes into the bank. And I do that because I want to be prepared. And looked out there, wasn't there, kept waiting and looking. Nope, wasn't there. And then on the day of payday, it became evident it was not going to get paid. So the situation is missing 2 weeks of pay, and this pay period included the mortgage, right? That was due. And so what I calmly did is, hey, wife, as we use Marcus account for an emergency fund. That's where our emergency fund sits. And just told her, go ahead and transfer. And I looked at the expenses you needed to pay in the 2 weeks. Go ahead and transfer that amount over into our day-to-day checking account that we use. So in this case, the emergency fund did what it's supposed to do. Now, am I happy to move money out of the emergency fund? No, but its job is for emergencies. And I thought about the scripture, Genesis 41, verses 34 through 36. And I encourage you to go read that entire chapter 41 of Genesis 41, in which Pharaoh is facing a problem. A dream is just bothering him about some undernourished cows. And he had to go to Joseph, who was in prison, by the way, who could interpret dreams. And he told Pharaoh, this is letting you know a famine is coming. A famine is going to come to the land. And so here's where this takes up is what Joseph is telling Pharaoh what to do. Genesis 41, verses 34 through 36 says, then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5. By the way, 1/5 is 20% of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it. So there will be food in the cities. That way, there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. So the whole concept of an emergency fund is right here. So you can see a couple of things. So during good times and abundance, don't eat all of your abundance or supply. Don't spend all of your money. Put some away in savings account. And now, when we're talking about an emergency fund and a savings account, this is not for day-to-day expenses. This is for when loss of income, or say you have a situation where you have a major break or home repair. And by the way, you could you could put away amount for just routine maintenance so where you wouldn't even have to still use your emergency fund, because you can put a line item in a budget or a spending plan for that. But say it could be for that. So what it's not used for is a day-to-day, oh, I want to go eat out to eat, or there's a sale that happens, something's on sale, I'm going to go into the emergency fund and utilize it. That's not what it's for. So you want to, if you're married, come to an agreement, hey, this is what we use the emergency fund for, because that's where the part of that scripture comes in about guard it, store it away and guard it. And so our emergency fund is not something we can easily get to. In fact, we use Marcus Goldman because of the high interest rate that they were paying, and they don't have retail branches. This is Goldman Sachs Marcus account. And so it's not easy to get to him, but it's still liquid, meaning it's not an investment that we have to cash in or we have to trade a stock or anything like that. It's liquid, but it's not easily accessible to make it easy for us to nibble off of it on something that's not an emergency, right? It's not an emergency. So we go back to some of the principles here. You want to collect. Now, this is 1/5, 20%. If you could put away 20% of your savings, I mean, that'd be awesome. But put away an amount, and I'm going to give you what Dave Ramsey says and Joe Sangle, who's come to our church. Dave Ramsey, for instance, I put the website Ramsey Solutions, and then I put Joe Sangle, I was broke, now I'm not. Uh, Dave Ramsey says with the baby steps, start off with $1,000. In some cases, if you earn like a low amount and 1,000 is difficult, do 500, get it to 1,000. Then eventually, after you've paid off, as much debt, your credit card debt, you want to go to a fully funded emergency fund, which is 3 to 6 months expenses, right? Expenses, you want to be, food, what we've talked about before, the four walls: your housing, your food, your transportation for work, and utilities, those type of things, not the extraordinary. So you may have to cut back during an emergency, but these are expenses, not 3 to 6 months of your take home pay, but 3 to 6 months of expenses. You want to put that in a say, it doesn't sit in your checking, put it in like a money market, something that's going to earn interest. But the purpose of it is not for the investment, but for the emergency. And then it says store it away. That's what we're talking about, a money market, and guard it. Right? Don't nibble off of it. Don't use it for things that are not emergencies. And then it says, when the famine comes, by the way, which says to us, when the emergency comes, when the mishap, when life happens, you've got the emergency fund. You don't have to use your credit card as the means to handle the emergency. So the other one was, I was broke, now I'm not. That's Joe Sango. He says he has like a ladder, and on rung 2 of the ladder, he says, start with 1 month, saving 1 month of expenses. So both of them different ways of doing it, but the idea is to have some savings for an emergency that will happen. I mean, something's going to happen. And we also talk, medical emergencies. I mean, those are definitely loss of job, layoffs, those type of things. So the other scriptures that brought to mind for me were Proverbs 22:3 and 27:12. By the way, I'd use different translations here, but if you looked up Proverbs 22:3 in the NIV, it says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the price. If you look up using the same translation, Proverbs 27, verse 12, it says the exact same thing, right? So God, in his word, is telling us twice: the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. And I use just a different translation to give a different type of meaning also. So in Proverbs 27:12, I used a New Living Translation. It says, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And then finally, in Proverbs 21:20, when we're talking about keeping something back, especially during times of abundance, the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. And by the way, you can create that abundance by carving some different things out of your spending plan or your budget, or taking a part-time job for the purposes of building up the spending plan or paying down debt, but not to use it to live on, but give it in a designated thing to do with those additional funds, not having it go and increasing your lifestyle, but using it to pay down debt and build up that emergency fund. Sell some things. Dave Ramsey talks about that. Maybe there's things you garage sell, some things you can sell just to jumpstart that emergency fund, get that $1,000 and get you on the way to that 3 to 6 months of living expense, so you have that emergency fund. So that's a great testimony, and the Lord allowed me to share. And then once they get my pay straight, and once you have the means, you go immediately back and refresh that emergency fund. So for me, it'll be when they get to pay, I'll take that amount, put it right back into the emergency fund. So we've got it stocked up. And by the way, we have a regular deduction that goes into the emergency fund. And if it gets to a certain level, we'll do something like, in this case, we pulled out an amount and put it into a CD because of the great interest rates that we were trying to lock in, or we did lock in before the September meeting, where everyone's saying, and it's a foregone conclusion, they're going to cut rates. So use the increase interest rates to your advantage right now. So what we did, the emergency fund got a certain level. We said, you know what, let's scrape it off. Let's put it into, in this case, I think we chose a 1-year CD, certificate of deposit, because that's not as liquid. But if necessary, in a really, really dire emergency, we could go into that CD, pay the penalty if needed. But we don't. We're just using it right now and getting additional interest paid on it. So with that, here's some different places you may go. Say, where are some places I can park the money? Do your own research. Here's U.S. News. I just did a Google search and said U.S. News money market interest. This is the list it came up with. You could go to bankrate.com. So do your research and find a parking place that you want. Because in this case, you're looking for something that gives you liquidity, meaning you can get in and out, accessible, but also pays, some interest rate other than, the 0.00 interest you may get on checking or in a savings account at a bank. Okay, let's change and let's look at this week's earnings. Not a lot out there because we are coming out of earnings season, but we do have some large companies reporting, but we are definitely starting to decrease the amount of companies reporting earnings. But Oracle is huge. That's technology. GameStop, that was that what they call meme stock. That was one of the darlings during the COVID era. They're reporting. We've got Big Lots and Kroger. That's going to give us some insight because in the news, it's been a lot about prices of consumer goods and prices of groceries. And then Adobe, that's going to give us, again, technology. Then I want to mention here Sports Academy. That's not a big stock, but it reminds me football season has started. Roll Tide. Here's how we end it. We definitely got some bearish. And remember, a bear fights with the paw down, meaning market's been going down. This is QQQ, mainly technology, smaller company stocks that are going. It is definitely broken its uptrend and we are heading down. And that's QQQ, the exchange traded fund. And then SPY, not uh, as a defined move down, but it's definitely down. And why? Because SPY has those companies like Kroger is in there, and it's not heavy technology as much as QQQ. You got some value companies in there, some financial companies in there, industrial company. So it's still in it's still bearish. And I wanted to show this screen here. Now, this is something you can't get free. This is a service I take. And in this, it was showing the pattern. So you can see this is an 18-month chart, and it's showing the pattern over 18 months is up, but there's an AI component where it will give you an analysis. And here's what the analysis says. The current sentiment, slightly bearish, right? So you can see that was SPY, and there it's sitting at a support line. And then here's it's saying that it could go all the way down to this area. Hopefully you can see my cursive here. And then it even gives you the target, the downside. So it closed on Friday at $540 a share, SPY. Then they said the downside targets could be, $516 or $515, right? So those are the areas. Again, do your own research. And this is, like I said, this is a service I pay for. So it clearly looks like we've got a bearish sentiment when it comes to SPY and the market. Well, that's this week's stewardship video. I hope you were blessed. I think that emergency fund was such a powerful testimony that it allowed me to share that principle. As always, remember Jesus is Lord, therefore he's the owner, but we're his faithful stewards continuing to manage his money according to his principles. We will see you next week as we get closer and closer to September 18th, which is when the Federal Reserve will be making a decision on interest rates. As I said, it's a foregone conclusion it's going to be a cut, but now it's how much? Is it a quarter point? There are a lot of people thinking out there it's going to be a half a point and then maybe get another cut in November of a half a point. So we'll see.